So in the previous video we started to create our site using the Foundry framework inside of RapidWeaver. And if we open up the live external preview by pressing Command P, you'll see that we have that navigation bar with our hero banner, app icon, text and button. What I want to start building now is the footer area, because currently we don't actually have that. And if we go to rapidweaverfoundry.com, you'll see that below the header area there we have our footer area here, and this is going to be a stacked partial that we apply to all the pages on our site. So let's go over to RapidWeaver and start building that footer. And to do that, the stack we're going to need to use is the container stack. Now this, as it says, is just a responsive content wrapper, so this is essentially a box to place other content inside of. Often what you would do is have a container and then you might drag and drop the column stack inside of there to add a responsive column layout. For us, what we're going to do is actually use this container stack as a full width banner area as such. So all we're going to do inside of here, or all we're going to do with this container stack, is set a background color. So all we do here is choose the color, and what I'm going to do is set this to a hex of 181B22, like so. So there you'll see we have that nice dark blue background. Now what we need to do is add content inside of there. So what we need is another container stack. So we're going to drag and drop the container in again. And then inside of here is where we are going to add our columns. So if we go back to the live website, you'll see we have essentially a 3-column layout here with links to resources. So what we need to use is the column stack inside of Foundry. So we drag and drop that in. And then you'll see here by default you get a 2-column layout. Now there's a lot of settings for the columns that you need to be aware of. Because this is a responsive columns layout stack, you have the freedom to customize how the columns are laid out on each device. So by default you get 2 columns. What we want is 3 columns, so we'll up that. And then below that you have the option to customize the columns, but you can see the defaults here. On the mobile, or on a mobile device, all of the column widths are 12. So you can customize this by checking here, and then what you can do is say on mobile I want the first column to be 12 and then perhaps the other 2 would be 6. So what would happen there is that the first column would be full width and then the 2 columns below that would be split evenly. So we are going to have a look at customizing this later on in the course, but for now we'll leave all of these as the defaults just so that we can start laying out our content. Okay, so inside of here what we need to do is add a header to each one of the columns. So again we'll search for the header stack and we'll drag and drop that in. And what we want this to be is a lot smaller, so I think we'll use an H4 and we will make it bold perhaps. And again the header style will be a color picker, and we will set the text to be white, like so. And I'll update the text here. On the first column we are saying getting started. Okay, and then below each one of those headers what we have is a linked list, or a list of links. So if you go and look here you'll see this is essentially just an unordered list of links. So luckily for us the Foundry framework provides a linked list stack. So all you need to do is drag and drop that in below the header. And then you will see here that you can add items. So you can add, by default there's 3, you can just click the plus button and you'll get more. We'll leave it as 3 for now. And what I'm going to do now is close out the stacks library so I've got a bit more space in edit mode. So here you'll see on the linked list stack is where you'll have the base styling for this list of links. So for us we wanted that to be centered, and the orientation is vertical, but you could do horizontal as well. And then on each item what we have is some text and an icon to the left of that. So what we want to do is add an icon to each one of these linked items here. And the first icon we're using is a download. And what we're saying is download Scriver, like so. And we'll need to set the link in a minute, but for now I'll just remove that one. So that is our first item. What we need to do is replicate that for all of the links that we have in the getting started area. So I'll quickly do that now. So the second one was getting started videos. And I'll remove the link for now, and we want to add an icon, and we want a video camera, like so. And then the third item was a PDF manual. So we put in PDF manual. Again, remove the link and add an icon. And this one we're using is a book. And then we'll finally add the fourth item, and that was help and support. Remove the link again, because obviously we don't actually have anywhere to link these off to, and add the icon. And the one we're using here is this one, the support icon, like so. So let's go over to Safari and preview that. Go back to our local server, and when we scroll down, here you'll see we have our list of links. We need to center the header, and we need to make that a little bit smaller actually, and we need to add some padding to the footer area and remove the margin from the header. So let's go and tidy that up now. So on the banner stack, the first thing we need to do is remove the base margin here. So that will get rid of the margin that we saw, so we don't get that white space behind it. And then the header, I actually want to make that a little bit smaller. I'm going to use an H5, and I am going to customize the font sizes as well. So for us, what we're going to use is 18 pixels on all devices, like so. And I want the alignment to be center. So let's go back and preview that now. And yeah, now we're looking a little bit better. What we need to add though is some padding to the footer area. So to do that, select the container stack, and all I'm going to do is update the layout and add some padding. And we're going to add 40 on the top and the bottom. Then what we need to do is actually contain this inner container to 960 pixels wide. So if you remember in the previous video, we set up the navigation bar to be 960 wide, and that is going to be the width of all of our content on the site. So ensure that you have a fixed width of 960 here. Then we can go back to Safari and preview that. And there you'll see we have a little bit more padding here, and we're starting to get the layout that we want. So what I'm going to do next is copy over these headers, or copy over the header into the other columns here, and copy the linked lists in below as well. And let's go and preview that. And there you'll see we now have our 3-column layout, and if we go and look at the live site, you'll see that's what we have here. We obviously need to update the links, which we'll do in just a minute. But what we need to add is a divider below that, and then some social links. So I'll open up the stacks library and search for divider. Drag and drop that in below the linked list. We'll leave it as the defaults for now. And then what we need to do, or then what we want, is some social badges. So again, luckily for us, Foundry provides that for us. We just drag and drop in the stack, and we can choose the icons that we want and how many of these items that we want as well. So we can add more, but we'll just stick to 3. And what we'll do is the first one will be Twitter. We'll remove the link. The next one will be Facebook, like so. And I'll remove the link. Now obviously by default the stacks here, they're all linking to elixirgraphics.com. Now obviously that's the developer's homepage. What you would want to do is obviously link off to your Facebook and Twitter profiles. I'll show you how to quickly do that. All you do is set the link, and you'll get the RapidWeaver standard link sheet. You can choose one of your other pages, or you can just type in the URL. So for example, for me that would be twitter.com/Ben Council, like so. And then you would set the link, and now that is where that user will be sent to when they click on that icon. But as you've seen, all I'm doing with a lot of these is just removing those links. You would, as I say, obviously link off to the correct page or URL. Okay, finally on the social badges, let's change this one to Instagram and remove that link again. And then on the social badges, what I'm going to do is just customize the sizing here. So I'm going to set the badge size to 28 pixels, make that a little bit smaller, and the font size or the icon size to be 16 pixels. The badge shape we'll leave as square, but you could go with circular if you wanted, like so. And you can adjust the spacing and stuff like that as well. And I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to set this to 20 pixels, so we get a little bit more air between these icons. Again, you can set the alignment. We want ours to be in the center to match the linked lists above. So let's go and preview that. And there you'll see we have our icons. You might be able to see that very dark or very faint divider line there. What we need to do is update the color of that so that we can see it, because if we go to our live site, you'll see we have a bit more spacing there and you can actually see that divider. So let's go to Safari and update the styling. So we'll say color picker, and then all I'm going to do is use a white at perhaps a 5% opacity, or maybe a little bit more than that. That's not quite noticeable. Let's say 10%. Go and preview that. And yeah, there we can see that a little bit better. And then finally, all we need to do is add some margin. So we'll say 20 pixels margin on the bottom of there. And again, go back to Safari and preview. And yet we're looking a little bit nicer. All we need to do now is add the copyright information at the bottom. So the stack I'm using for that copyright information is a note stack. So we'll just pop that into there. Again, we'll align that to be the center. We'll leave it as muted text, and we will just say copyright 2016 Real Mac Software. Or actually, we'd probably say Scriber, as that's our company. So let's go and preview that again. And yep, there we see we get that in there. We need a little bit of margin on the bottom of these social badges, so we'll do that here. We'll say perhaps 20 pixels as well. And yep, there we're looking pretty good. We could adjust the colorings further. They're slightly different on the previous example site that I built. However, for now, I think that's looking pretty good. All we need to do before we finish up here is update these links. So I will pause the video now and do that very quickly in RapidWeaver. Okay, so I've just updated the headers and the links inside of the footer area here. Let's go and preview that in Safari. And there you'll see we have the updated links and icons next to each one as well. Okay, finally, before we finish up this lesson, what I wanted to do is go back and revisit those responsive column settings, because right now what we can do is if we enter Safari's responsive design mode, you'll see here if we go to, for example, the iPhone 6, those columns automatically stack above each other. So as we get wider, what will happen is they will go in a 3-column layout. When the width gets too small, they will snap and they will go above each other. So this is the default behavior. What will happen is once you get to a tablet sized, or once you get below a certain width, what will happen is, as I say, they will stack on top of each other. You can adjust those settings by going to the column stack, and then as we did before, you can customize the columns. So for example here, if on the tablet columns you wanted to have 6, 6 and then 6, so this would work if you had 4 columns, you would then get 2 and 2. And what we can do is, for example, on the first one is set 12 for the first, as I mentioned previously, and then have 2 below that. So column width 2 is 6 and so is 3. So you can see here the first one is taking up the full 12 columns, the other 2 are divided in half. So let's go to Safari and preview that. And there you'll see when we go to a tablet sized, we'll get that first column taking up the full width here, and then the other 2 are split evenly below that. Obviously that doesn't work very well in this case, but I want to start showing you how you can use all of the Foundry stacks to customize the layout for your site on any device. Because as I said previously, the Foundry framework is a responsive framework, so it gives you the tools to build a responsive website, and you have complete control over how your content is laid out on each device. So what we're going to do is actually set that back to be 12 on, or actually 6, sorry, on the tablet. That was the default. Now that doesn't work on this case, so if you didn't want to customize the tablet breakpoint, you can just uncheck that option here, and what will happen is it will use the mobile custom column settings until it gets to a desktop size. So what that means is that that will then stack at this width, but when we get up to a desktop, you'll see that we are then using the desktop custom column settings here, which is 6, 6 and 6. Now obviously what we would really want is 4, 4, 4, because if you are unaware, perhaps this is a point that you're getting a little bit confused about here, the Foundry framework is based upon a 12 column layout. So most frameworks that you use, you'll see that they use a 12 column layout. So whenever you're dividing up your columns here, they need to add up to 12, otherwise the layout will be broken. So that would mean if we had 4 columns, we'd obviously need to set each column width to be 3 on the desktop if we wanted them to all line up nicely next to each other. But as I say, in this case we've got 3 columns, so we set that to 4 for each one, and then we get stacked, we get them side by side on the desktop. But as we go smaller, you'll see that they stack as soon as we get down to a tablet sized device. If we wanted that to be different, just to reinforce this, we can set the custom columns for a tablet device. So we check that option again, and then, as I said, what we could do is customize these columns. So the first one can be 12 and the other two can be 6 again. So then when we go back and preview and we go down to that tablet size, there you'll see that the first one is 12 again and the other two are split. So what we're going to do is actually undo all of that. We're not going to customize these columns. I just wanted to show you that those options are available. We probably will be using that later on in this course, so I wanted to get you familiar with how this works. But the defaults will often work for you, but if you need a little bit fine-grained control, all of those options are there for you. So we'll leave it as the defaults and we'll check that that works nicely still. Yeah, there we go. So as we get smaller, they snap and they stack on top of each other, and that works nicely for our footer layout. Okay, one other thing to notice, if you don't have this develop menu and you can't enter Safari's responsive design mode, what you need to do is go to the preferences. Then you need to go to the advanced tab and you need to show develop menu in menu bar. This will give you a whole host of new features inside of Safari, such as the responsive design mode. You'll also get the inspect element. So if you right click on something, you can inspect that element. That will bring up the developer tools and show you the code behind the page that you're working on. So you can go in and customize that and see the CSS that's being applied. We're not going to be covering the web developer tools in this course. I just wanted to show you that that was available. Okay, that'll do it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we'll start looking at actually building the Scriver application page. So once you're ready, I'll see you in the next video.